All right, tonight on The ReidOut.
In my administration, I'm going to enforce all laws concerning the protection of classified information.
Well, that didn't age well. 6 years after that remark, Trump is now changing his excuse almost daily for why he may have stashed classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. Now, meanwhile, Rudy Giuliani received some bad news from prosecutors in Georgia regarding their election interference investigation. And also tonight, FBI agents are facing an increasing number of threats as Republican leaders stay mostly silent about the dangerous rhetoric coming from the right. Plus, a preview of Liz Cheney's primary tomorrow in Wyoming, where MAGA supporters seem intent on pushing her for telling the truth about Donald Trump. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tiffany Crossan, tonight for Joy Reid, and we begin the ReidOut with significant developments in a number of investigations involving former President Donald Trump. Today, Politico reported that a federal grand jury investigating the January 6th attack has subpoenaed Trump White House lawyer Eric Hirschman for documents and testimony. Now, this makes him the third White House lawyer to receive a DOJ subpoena, along with Trump's White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, and Deputy Counsel Patrick Philbin. Now, as you may remember, Hirschman's testimony to the House January 6th committee was featured throughout their hearings. What this means for Donald Trump, though, according to Andrew Weissman, the former lead prosecutor in the Mueller investigation, is that there is, quote, no question now that Trump is the target of the federal January 6th probe. Weissman added, quote, correct move here. Lock people into the grand jury. Meanwhile, in Georgia, you have the investigation into Trump's alleged election interference led by Fulton County DA Fani Willis. Today, NBC News learned that Trump's former personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, has been named a target of the criminal investigation. He's expected to testify in person before that grand jury on Wednesday. And that is all on top of what we have seen play out this past week with the FBI's search of Mar-a-Lago over classified documents Trump stored there. Today, federal prosecutors are asking a federal judge to keep the affidavit, which details probable cause for the search, under seal to, quote, protect the integrity of an ongoing law enforcement investigation that implicates national security. The prosecutors write that any disclosure could compromise future investigative steps. Now, when it comes to those documents, we have seen the ever-shifting explanations from Trump and his allies over why they keep being found at his Florida home. Now, for those who have paid any attention to Trump while he was in office, this past week followed a very familiar playbook, and it started with him saying, I didn't do anything wrong, followed by, well, if I did do it, there's nothing wrong with it, to I did it, but it's not a problem. Now, we've seen that show before, and of course, he landed on everyone does it. In this case, the New York Times lays it out perfectly. First, he said that he was working and cooperating with government agents who he claimed had inappropriately entered his home. Then, when the government revealed that the FBI had actually recovered a dozen sets of documents that were marked classified, he suggested the agents planted evidence. Finally, his aides claimed he had a standing order to declassify documents that left the Oval Office for his residence, and that some of the material was protected by attorney-client and executive privilege. Now, of course, the various excuses are often contradictory and unsupported by facts. But when does that stop him? As for the latest one, that material at Mar-a-Lago was already declassified because there was a standing order to declassify materials. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton disputed those claims.
When a document is declassified, it's not just declassified as to Donald Trump, it's declassified for the whole world. So in theory, if that order existed, which I don't think it did, the news media could today file a Freedom of Information Act request for every document he declassified, which over a 4-year period could be a pretty high stack. So I think this is made up, and I think a key point here is when somebody's making up stories like that, I think it indicates a level of desperation.
All right, let's get into it. Joining me now is Mark Caputo, NBC News senior national political reporter, Paul Butler, Georgetown law professor and a former federal prosecutor, and Asher Rangappa, former special agent with the FBI's counterterrorism division and the assistant dean of Yale University's Jackson School of Global Affairs. Paul, I have to start with you. This DOJ news that they've subpoenaed Hirschman, just to remind our viewers, he represented Donald Trump in the former president's first impeachment trial and later joined the White House as a senior advisor. And he was kind of an interloper there because he was somebody who was pushing the big election lie and really in conflict with a lot of the folks in the White House around that time. What do you make of the DOJ subpoenaing him, and what could they be looking to get from him?
So we know that Hirschman was in the room for a lot of the meetings about how to overturn the election. He was present at that crazy January 4th meeting where Trump was explicitly informed that the fake elector scheme was illegal and unconstitutional, but he apparently didn't care. So, Tiffany, at some point in a grand jury investigation, prosecutors start to preserve the testimony of witnesses if they're contemplating a prosecution. I think that at this point, Trump is clearly a subject of the federal grand jury investigation relating to January 6th. He's still a few steps away from being a target.
Explain to the viewers the difference between a subject and a target.
So certainly Rudy Giuliani learned this the hard way today when he became a target of an investigation in Georgia. A target means that you are likely to be prosecuted, that prosecution may not be imminent, but the prosecutor believes she has evidence to charge with a crime. A subject is a step before being a target. It means that the grand jury is focusing on you. Sometimes state police departments say that you're a person of interest. That's like being a subject.
Yes, I remember when person of interest entered the lexicon. Mark, I want to get to your latest reporting because it sounds like there was just a clear disregard by this president, whose first job in government was as president of the United States. There was a disregard for handling sensitive materials. What did you learn? What are people saying? I saw in some of your reporting that aides would literally have to tape documents back together and pull them out of the trash. Give us the details.
Yeah, right. Those weren't classified documents from what we understand. Those were documents, records, common pieces of paper that should have been set aside for the Presidential Records Act. They had to have an aide pick up the stuff that he would tear up and throw in the garbage or sometimes just throw on the floor. Other times, John Bolton, whose quote we just played there, told us that the president had a penchant for just grabbing classified intelligence, sensitive documents, and wanting to read them, taking them elsewhere, and it was kind of a challenge to keep him from kind of walking off with it. John Kelly, the former chief of staff, verified that account. So it was just this kind of broad, sort of typical Trump, where, he wanted to do something, and then he just kind of did it and didn't regard what the norms were, what the practices were, what the laws had laid out at the time. And as a result, you just have this kind of mishmash of different stories of the president, or the former president at the time, just kind of constantly disregarding aid. Some of them said they actually warned him, that they were worried about it, and him just kind of stashing documents hither and yon. In the last days in the White House, that was described to us, there was a chaotic scene where they were throwing various things in boxes, and some sensitive records could have been thrown in there. And then all of these things wind up in Mar-a-Lago, and the next thing you know, after a series of different events, you suddenly have FBI agents sort of storming the gates there and finding all of this stuff in all of these boxes, and now there's a criminal investigation.
Asha, based on what Mark just said, I want to bring you in here because this sounds, you could take this a couple ways, right? Like maybe he was just unintelligent, and was careless. But then I want to remind our viewers that he did have the Russians in the Oval Office. He did leak sensitive information to the Russians from a U.S. partner that led to quite the upset when he had the Russian ambassador and the national security person from Russia, Kislyak, in the Oval Office. And that caused quite a stir. So I wonder if this is intentional chaos to throw everyone off. And if that is the case, what would be his objectives?
Well, I mean, as was just mentioned, he's been incredibly cavalier with classified information. In addition to the example that you just mentioned, he's tweeted out very sensitive satellite photos, for example. And while he was president, the defense was, well, he's an original classification authority. He can declassify anything. He can just put it out there. And I think that that's become a little bit of a red herring in this investigation, because particularly with regard to the Espionage Act, there's no mention of declassified or classification in there at all. It talks about a specific type of information. It's national defense information that the person who possesses it, Trump, has reason to believe could injure the United States or help a foreign government. And in this case, he clearly understands that. He was president for 4 years. And so it's going to be a factual determination. It either is or it isn't. And changing the classification on it, declassifying it, putting another label on it. I mean, you could call it a pepperoni pizza. If it's a sensitive secret that can harm the U.S., that is true regardless of the label you put on it. So I think this defense tries to avoid the big question, which is, why would he want to declassify these kinds of secrets? Why would he want sensitive sources and methods to be revealed? And it goes back to these examples that you mentioned, Tiffany. Why is he, putting this stuff out there? And I think it only bolsters the justification for the Department of Justice to be very concerned with what Trump's intentions were with having this voluminous secret material and classified material in his home.